Okay, so let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at a 17th century poem that was so powerful it was basically a weapon in a war for the English throne. Yeah, this was a time when a few rhyming lines could actually shape public opinion and challenge the entire line of succession.
So how in the world does that even happen? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack how John Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel wasn't just some stuffy piece of literature. It was a strategic hit launched directly into the heart of a national crisis.
All right, so picture this. It's 1681, and England is in absolute turmoil. This poem wasn't written for quiet reflection in a library. Oh no. It was launched like a missile into a political firestorm with a very, very clear mission.
Now, at the time, John Dryden was the poet laureate. You can think of him as the king's official writer, and he used his incredible literary genius not just to entertain, but to defend his boss, King Charles II, and to just systematically take down his political enemies in print.
So here's where Dryden gets really clever. His masterstroke was using a famous Bible story as a kind of secret code for the politics of his day. This made his attack feel really high-minded and sophisticated, while at the same time being just absolutely devastating. And this right here, this is the key to unlocking the whole thing. You've got King David, who stands in for King Charles II, his handsome, super popular son Absalom, that represents the Duke of Monmouth. And the real villain of the piece, the advisor Achitophel, well, he's a stand-in for the Earl of Shaftesbury, who is the king's #1 political rival.
The way Dryden portrays the king is just brilliant. See, he doesn't paint him as this perfect ruler. Instead, he's wise and legitimate, but also deeply flawed. His leniency towards his son comes across as both a father's love and a king's political weakness, which kind of makes you feel like the whole crisis is partly his own fault.
And Absalom, who is really the Duke of Monmouth, isn't painted as some purely evil guy either. Nope, he's more of a tragic figure. Charismatic, brave, loved by the people. But ultimately, he's misguided by his own ambition and, more importantly, by some really, really bad advice.
But Dryden saves his real venom for Achitophel. He portrays the Earl of Shaftesbury as this brilliant but morally bankrupt manipulator, a master persuader who's just using the ambitious young duke as a pawn in his own twisted game for power.
So, now that we know the players, let's look at the incredibly high-stakes game they were all playing. And believe me, this wasn't just some political squabble, this was a full-blown constitutional crisis, known as the Exclusion Crisis.
You can just see how quickly things went off the rails here. The monarchy gets restored, but for years, this fear of Catholicism is just simmering under the surface. Then, a completely made-up conspiracy, the Popish plot, whips the whole country into an anti-Catholic frenzy. And that panic is what sets the stage for the Exclusion Crisis, where one political party tried to legally change who was next in line for the throne.
And really, this was the heart of the whole matter. The king's official heir, his brother James, was a Catholic. The Whigs, led by Shaftesbury, wanted to pass a law to literally exclude him from the throne because they were terrified of a return to Catholic rule. The entire country was split right down the middle, and Dryden's calm was dropped right into that inferno. So how did he do it? How did Dryden write a piece of what is essentially political propaganda that was so good, so beautifully crafted, that we're still studying it as a literary masterpiece today? Well, he chose the heroic couplet as his weapon. What's that? It's a pair of rhyming lines in a specific rhythm, iambic pentameter, which has this natural cadence, almost like a human heartbeat. This tight, balanced structure is just perfect for delivering these sharp, witty, and absolutely devastating takedowns. It sounds elegant, but man, it carries a serious punch. And this right here is just a brilliant example of his skill. He's describing another opponent, the Duke of Buckingham, who he calls Zimri in the poem. And in just 2 perfect lines, he completely dismisses him as this fickle, inconsistent opportunist with no core principles. It's a brutal and totally unforgettable takedown. So this was Dryden's toolkit, right? He had the powerful biblical allegory, these biting character sketches, and this tone of calm moral authority. You put all that together and you've elevated what could have been a simple political pamphlet into a work of enduring art. So why does this poem's legacy go so far beyond this one political battle? I mean, why are we still talking about it hundreds of years later? Well, to put it simply, this poem basically created the blueprint for political satire in England. It set the gold standard for how art could powerfully jump into a political debate, and it influenced centuries of writers, from giants like Alexander Pope right up to the commentators and satirists we watch today. But ultimately, Absalom and Achitophel survives because it explores these huge, timeless questions about power, loyalty, and leadership that are just as relevant now as they were back in 1681. It asks, what really makes a ruler legitimate? And how easily can good people be corrupted by ambition and bad advice?
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on. In the short term, Dryden's poem definitely helped his side win the political fight. But in the long run, who's the real winner? Is it the artist who creates a timeless masterpiece? Or is it the politician who uses that art to grab and hold on to power? It's a question that the poem itself never really stops asking.